Now, Novak Djokovic is probably currently giving 7 bells of hell to his manager, who probably told him that, don't worry, Novak, you get on the plane. We've managed to get you an exemption. It's all good. And while he's in the air, the manager gets roasted because it turns out that it's not actually sorted. And it's become a huge political football, never mind tennis ball.
Yeah, new balls, please.
Yes.
Last night you retweeted me, and I have had like 50 people in my mentions making the new balls, please joke, which is very good. It's funny. It was certainly funny.
Listen, it's topical, isn't it?
As far as I can understand, and we are still in the fog of news, and I have been squatting on the Australian newspaper's website, that's the paper that I write for and I covered Brexit for, trying to get to the bottom of this. But we are very much still in the fog of news, and it is unclear what is going on. But as I understand it, and this is subject to revision, so don't assume that anything I'm saying here is the fount of all wisdom, because it may very well not be, is that Djokovic had a legitimate exemption to getting the vaccine, and that exemption was granted by ATAGI, which is the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation.
Right.
It wasn't the Victorian government, it wasn't the federal government, it was an independent Quango, statutory body. And remember, they tend to work properly, Quangos do, in Australia.
Do they?
It seems to be...
How unusual. We don't have that experience in this country.
No, you don't. And it's even worse in America. It's why you get Australians making comments. They go to the US and they go, oh my God, it's a failed state, because nothing seems to work for them. So ATAGI provided this, appears to have, unless it emerges in the court case here, the hearing on Monday, because there's been an adjournment. No injunction, just an adjournment, because the court needs the paperwork, and the court's already said that we need Djokovic's paperwork on Saturday, and then we need the federal government and the Victorian government and Tennis Australia's responses on Sunday. So they've already said that.
That tells me, Helen, that they're looking for a resolution out of this, which is good for them, i.e. that Novak Djokovic will be able to play. They're sort of giving him, because they could have just said today, you know what? Sorry, we're not letting you in. When you had COVID, it was too long ago, so the antibodies don't count. And also, you're not really providing us with enough paperwork already, so you can just go get on the next plane and go back home. But so by giving them his extension, I wonder whether they're actually trying to give him a way out of this.
I don't know. Another part of the reporting, and remember the information I'm putting together here is coming from multiple sources. Another part of the reporting, there's 2 parts of it, is one, it appears that Tennis Australia has provided the same form letter to other people. Now, some media reports are saying it's only 2, one other player and one other official or manager for the entourage that tennis players have. And I have read other reports saying that it's up to 25 people. Now, the Australian is saying it's only 2, and I would go with the Australian at the moment because it's a more reliable news source. But this could develop, fog of news. So there's that. And the other thing that has come out is that it appears that Djokovic's manager, which gets back to your earlier point about the manager screwing up, applied for the wrong subclass of visa.
Oh dear.
There is a specific visa in Australia for people who have vaccine exemptions that doesn't just apply to COVID. Australia has very strict vaccine rules for all of the other illnesses, anything that, like particularly for things that the country, like for example, Australia has no rabies and doesn't want rabies introduced into the country. That kind of thing.
I'm pretty sure he hasn't got rabies, but you can't be absolutely certain, can you? But the thing is, right, it's become this mad situation, like everything in the world now. Here we've got the Prime Minister of Australia having a go at the state of Victoria, the state of Victoria having a go at him, the people running the tennis tournament all kind of at 6s and 7s. Nobody seems to know what the actual law is here.
Well, there are 2 things that are clearly known, is Tennis Australia and the Australian Open are very much Victorian institutions, and the Australian Open is played at the Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne. So that's very Victorian. However, constitutionally, visa rules are set by the federal government, and the Victorian government cannot intervene on those. But there's already been leaks. The Australian already has a leak of some correspondence between Tennis Australia and the federal government, where already going back last year, there were shots being fired across the bow from the federal government, from Border Force and the Home Affairs is the equivalent of Home Secretary in Australia, Karen Andrews. So the Priti Patel's counterpart in Australia is a lady called Karen Andrews, and she's already been saying for some months, you guys are pushing the envelope about how many exemptions you're trying to get and how many rules you're trying to change. And do put this in context in Australia. Many people, including many Australians, including the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, are opposed to compulsory vaccination. Okay, people don't like that. That's widely unpopular. Outside of the European Union, outside of those countries with Roman law traditions where it's more part of their culture. In the UK, it's proven unpopular. It played a part in the North Shropshire by-election. It's an issue in Australia, those kind of things. Right. Very few people, regardless of politics, are opposed to a sovereign national government setting border.
Yes. Well, it seems to me, Helen, that a lot of Australians have said that they're not happy about him being given an exemption in the first place, because as far as they're concerned, you know, if it's one rule for him and a different rule for them, then that's not in any way equitable. But I wonder whether, as an Australian living abroad, Helen, you feel that this will kind of further almost isolate Australia, because it's so far away anyway from the rest of the world, that people are now looking upon it as a bit of an odd place. And I don't know whether that's fair, but I think that's what people are thinking.
Part of the issue, the reason why there's been so much outrage in Australia, and to get this right, I actually talked to some Australian friends, had quite a long chat with them last night so that I could present good information here to you and to Talk Radio listeners. Remember the controversy over the parties in number 10 and how they really did play a very significant role in that by-election, in the North Shropshire by-election. And it was rules for some, not for the little people. Now, Australia has those cultural values much, much more intensely than the United Kingdom. There have been far fewer breaches by celebrities or politicians in Australia than there have been in the UK or the US. You've seen almost none of it. The worst of it was Dan Andrews took a holiday at the wrong time.
I remember that.
He's the Victorian Premier. And he absolutely got the snot blown out of him and started to crash in the polls and basically had to grovel, because Australians have a much more intensely communitarian and egalitarian culture. So you don't get this cultural thing that has emerged here, and we've seen it with the Bristol acquittal, even though it was by the jury, so you need to respect what the jury held. You don't have this thing that where people can get away with something because they're from an ethnic minority or because they're posh or a politician or a celebrity. That is judged much more harshly in Australia. And so that aspect of the outrage that, Novak Djokovic is Novak Djokovic, as he's being called, is getting an exemption on the basis that he's a celebrity and a sports star and he's won all these Grand Slams, really bites Australians right where it hurts in terms of their egalitarian cultural traditions. And do remember, one of the things that a lot of people, including many people in this country and in the United States and in France, admire about Australia is the fact that not only does it have borders, it enforces them.
Yes. Well, woe betide anybody that would try and compare that to this country. I mean, if we had the sort of border control Australia had, we'd be in a much better place.